Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the direct-to-video animated sequel, An Extremely Goofy Movie. Now, this is one of those films that I gotta be honest, going into it, I did not expect much. In fact, I expected it to not be very good because it's a direct-to-video Disney animated sequel. And the track record of direct-to-video Disney animated sequels is pretty poor. But I will be honest here as well. I didn't mind it. I had some fun with it. I would say it's probably a time waster at best, but I still enjoyed it, at least for one watch. I definitely feel it had its merits, and I think there were some good things about it. I don't like it nearly as much as a Goofy movie, but for a direct-to-video sequel, it honestly is better than a lot of them tend to be, especially from Disney. Um, it's directed by Douglas McCarthy, and the animation and the direction and all of that together with this movie, it's nowhere near as consistently strong as what was present in a Goofy movie, but I think it's still good enough. I think one of the things is it definitely had a lower budget to work with, so there's not as much in terms of flexibility because of the finances, in terms of what kinds of shots and what kind of ambitious direction you can get away with a lower budgeted kind of project. But I think there are some moments of the direction where the director does try to be a little bit more out of the box, like the whole dream sequence that Goofy has that looks like something out of the Yellow Submarine, or some of the extreme sports scenes and the flashbacks or the sequences that Goofy has where he's remembering what it was like to be with Max when Max was a kid, and there is a decent amount of energy to it. I wouldn't say it's a totally flat looking film, but you could definitely tell that it's direct to video and there are limitations because of that. But the direction is good enough. But it's just not anything that's amazing. I don't think it's at all on the same level as what was showcased in the first film. The script by Scott Gordon, it's one of those screenplays where there are things about it that I think are really clever. For instance, there are some meta moments which I thought were really funny, where Bobby would remark uh, and wonder why they're all wearing gloves, which I thought that was really funny. There isn't a lot of moments like that though, so it's not like it's a script that is consistently clever in that way, but it's a script that does have more clever moments than a direct-to-video sequel to a Goofy movie would necessarily have in theory. And I do like the whole setup where it turns into a Disney goofy version of Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield, where Max goes to college and Goofy is dealing with the fallout from that emotionally, and that causes him to lose his job. So then he winds up going back to college because he can't get another job because the unemployment office tells him he's got to get a degree. And he's like, well, I didn't finish college. So he goes back to college. And of course, it's got to be the same college that Max is going to, even though technically it probably doesn't have to be. But, you know, because of the fact that you need to have it for the shenanigans and the comedic concept of Max's out of touch dad going to college with him and the cringe that ensues, you're going to have him go to the same college. And that's where you get the whole back to school aspect of it. And honestly, I didn't mind that take on it. And I think it was really sweet and nice to see Goofy get a girl. The whole relationship that starts to uh, um, form between Goofy and this librarian, um, Sylvia. I thought that was really charming, and I liked that a lot. I really felt that that was nice to see, because you really don't see Goofy get the girl that much. You don't really see Goofy get girls, period. I mean, you know that he had to have gotten a girl because that's how he has Max, but you never really see Max's mom anywhere. She's not really mentioned. So it's one of those things where you know that he had to have had some game, but you didn't really see a lot of that. So it was nice to see him showcase that in this film. And I think the scenes between him and Sylvia are really cute, and the fact that they are kind of stuck in the past and have the a lot of nostalgic views of the 70s, the time when they grew up. I think that honestly is something that really just adds to the charm of the scenes between those characters. But the script really starts to lose me when it comes to a lot of the stuff that Max is doing. I don't really care as much about the extreme sports stuff. It feels forced in there. It feels like one of those, like, oh, hey, Max is cool. Get it? Max is cool, kids, because he's into extreme sports and skateboarding, and his dream is to win the X Games. And that feels very forced and shoehorned in there. And it's just as forced as the ESPN advertising in this movie, because this is definitely a film that was only made in large part to fill a slot for the direct-to-video part of Disney at the time, and to advertise ESPN, because Disney recently purchased ESPN and ESPN2 at this time. So there's just a lot of ESPN branding like all over the place throughout the movie. And it can be a bit distracting. And the whole X Games plot also has like the villain, this snooty rich boy. I think his name is Bradley, and his team. And he turns Goofy against Max because Goofy just somehow is good at skateboarding by accident. So he joins the opposing team, and Max also is in on it too, because he just thinks that Goofy will sabotage the other team's chances because he's such a goof. But then it just goes the opposite direction, and because of Bradley and his team's cheating, Goofy upstages his son in the competition. And so there's a lot of drama with that, but that doesn't really resonate as strongly with me compared to other bits of drama, like the empty nest stuff with Goofy when his son goes away and goes to college, and he's left with the empty rooms and just memories, and it's just all coming to a head and just hitting him like a ton of bricks. That is some really effective drama. The stuff with the X Games and whatever, I don't care about. Also, I hate that Roxanne is just completely not mentioned at all. Like, there's no reference, there's no mention of it, that doesn't tell you what happened to Roxanne, the girl that Max fell for and did all this stuff at the Powerline concert and went through all this trouble to go to Los Angeles in a Goofy movie. And Roxanne is never talked about. You don't know what happened to Max and Roxanne. I guess, I think, because I saw a clip on YouTube, and I think it's a little, but I think it's just a cheeky edit that somebody made, and it's not really an actual explanation for things. But I think it's like a bit in like the House of Mouse cartoon, and there's a scene with Max and Roxanne, and maybe that's it, why Roxanne is not in it. But I just think they just decided to just ignore it and just skip it, and not and think that the fans would just uh be okay with that and be fine with Goofy and Sylvia's relationship budding being a replacement for that. And I disagree. I really feel that you could have had Roxanne going to college and being with Max. Maybe Roxanne could have been surprisingly good at skating or something. There could have been a way to get Roxanne in there, and they just didn't even bother. And it's a shame. And it really feels like Max is just kind of not kind of, his character is very limited in this script as a result because he's just there for the X Games plot and for the stuff with him and his dad, which just feels like a rehash from a lot of the stuff that happened in a Goofy movie. There's also this weird stuff with like there's a beatnik group who are at the local coffee house, and they do they play jazz and they do slam poetry. I don't think it's slam poetry, but they do poetry readings and they snap. And it's like, what is this? Like, this doesn't fit in a film called An Extremely Goofy Movie. It's out of place. It's just as out of place as the 70s stuff, which that makes more sense than the beatnik stuff because the 70s stuff is there for Goofy. And it's an extension of just how out of place and out of time Goofy is comparison to Max and his world. So that's something that I could kind of I can deal with more. But yeah, speaking of music, like there's no musical numbers, there's no original songs. So it's not a musical like the first film was, so that's a bit disappointing too. And it's also pretty predictable. And I'm not saying that the first film wasn't either, but here just seems even more so and definitely a lot more cliched because of the whole X Games stuff. And of course, Goofy is gonna reconcile with Max, and Max's team loses a member, and they need to get somebody last minute, otherwise they'll forfeit the match. Oh, it happens to be Max's dad, and then they somehow, against all odds, they win the competition. They win the X Games. I mean, even the stuff with Max's friends felt like it wasn't really that well written either because they were just there to be members of his team for the X Games. Other than the little line with Bobby talking about why do we wear gloves, it didn't seem like his other friend, um, yeah, Pete. It didn't seem like PJ. Yeah, PJ. It didn't seem like PJ really had a lot to do. Uh, so yeah, that wasn't the best either. And the extreme sports stuff, like I'm not really that big of a fan of that kind of stuff anyway, so it didn't really entice me as much as it probably would have for other people. I was more entertained by the relationship between Goofy and Sylvia than any of the X Games stuff, but that's just me. But yeah, it's one of those movies where it's not bad, it's not terrible, but it really at the end of the day, it's just kind of there, just kind of okay. And I think in large part, it's really due to the script. I think it definitely could have been better. The voice acting, though, I think is honestly pretty excellent across the board. I mean, Jason Marsden, once again, is really a lot of fun as Goof, as Max Goof. Now he's 19, he's going to college. I like that voiceover performance from Jason in this. I think he just does a great job playing Max, and it was really nice to hear him play this character again. To do this role one more time. Bill Farmer is once again fantastic as Goofy. Really does pick up where he left off when it comes to a Goofy movie. The bits where he's dealing with empty nest syndrome are very heartbreaking and feel very uh, realistic, and just really do pull at the heartstrings in a very tangible way. And in large part, it's because of what Bill Farmer brings to the table as Goofy. Jeff Bennett as Bradley Uppercrust the Third just really didn't do much for me. Just it's a character that I think is supposed to be funny because he's like making uh silly faces at times, and he seems like he's so out of the loop, but and he's arrogant and all of this, but the voiceover is just very standard and stock. Jim Cummings is once again really good as Pete, but he's not really in it a lot. You have Vicki Lewis, who plays the beret girl, who then becomes PJ's love interest, but she didn't do anything for me. Bebe Neuwirth, she voices Sylvia. I thought she did a really solid job as that character. I really liked her take on the role, and I really felt that her and Bill Farmer had some really good chemistry with one another when it comes to the sequences with the two. Rob Paulsen, once again, is decent enough as PJ, but he isn't really given a whole lot to do. Pauly Shore at times as Bobby. There are times where he has the same sort of energy that he had in the first movie, but then there's other times where his line delivery is kind of tired, and I think that speaks to the fact that he was an older man when he did the voiceover work, trying to sound like he's a teenager. Brad Garrett, he's the voice of Tank. I would say Brad Garrett was the other voiceover performer that I was at all enamored with in this film. I did like his take on that character. I liked his performance. There's a certain dopey but still likable sensibility that he brought to the character. Part of me almost wonders if the roles are reversed and the voice over actor Jeff Bennett voiced that character, and then Brad Garrett voiced the bad guy. Maybe that might have been a little bit better if he voiced Bradley. But yeah, not a bad voice cast. The music by Steve Bartek, in one ear, out the other. Nothing really that special. The songs for the soundtrack were a lot of typical 70s hits and other songs that, you can dance to, but really don't have the same staying power as Powerline's music from a Goofy movie or any of the other original songs like On the Open Road. And, it runs for like 79 minutes. And that's definitely another thing that the film has going for it, is that it doesn't overstay its welcome too much. It's not too long. It's not too tedious. I didn't really feel it was considerably boring, even though I wasn't consistently invested in the film when it comes to every aspect of the plot or all of the characters. But I wouldn't call it a boring film. So it's one of those movies where, if you liked a Goofy movie, you like those characters, you want to see some more of them, definitely worth a watch at least once. But it definitely doesn't have the same magic as a Goofy movie. But anyway, that's my thoughts on an extremely Goofy movie. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.